Following is a special presentation of TNN Sports. Good afternoon and welcome to New Hampshire International Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire. I'm Eli Gold. For the second time in 58 days, we join you from New Hampshire, shaken by the loss of a friend. 2 months ago, Adam Petty. This week, Kenny Irwin. An accident here Friday morning, claiming the life of one of racing's youngest stars at the tender age of 30. Most all of our pre-race coverage today will focus on this tragedy. We'll find out how the drivers are faring. We'll hear from the sanctioning body. We'll talk to the fans. We'll, in general, just bring you the feel of what is a very unfortunate weekend here in the Granite State of New Hampshire. Dr. Dick Berggren, as per usual, is alongside. And Dick, one thing is for sure. It's been a very unusual day today. The atmosphere in the garage this morning, just downright strange.
It was eerie this morning in the garage, Eli. The crews went about the business of preparing for today's race with their heads down and their eyes focused on the job ahead. No jokes today, just thinking about whatever they could other than what happened here on Friday morning. Nuts, bolts, engines, setups, tires. These men lost one of their own, a friend, a brother, and they're dealing with it by turning wrenches and by racing. We, too, will focus on the race, but as we do, Kenny Irwin's memory will be on our minds.
Hall of Fame driver Buddy Baker is alongside. To say that this is a difficult weekend is an understatement.
Eli, it's very difficult for the crews, for the drivers, and every driver as he goes into this event today has Kenny Irwin in the back of his mind. Everybody thinks about it, but they realize they have a job to do today, and they'll do it the best they can, but they certainly won't forget Ernie Irwin.
Kenny Irwin was a fine young racer. When he came to NASCAR, he had a wonderful series of credentials that really heralded exactly what we expected he would become, and that was the NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year. Kenny Irwin was an outstanding USAC star, but when he came to NASCAR, there was a learning curve. But trust me, folks, from his days in open wheel competition, sprints, midgets, Silver Crown, you just knew that victory lane was going to be the regular address for Kenny Irwin. Regretfully, in NASCAR Winston Cup, that is one career goal that will remain unattained. Let's go trackside now. Here's Glenn Jarrett.
Well, thanks, Eli. Just like everyone else down here, as I stand here, it's just really hard for me to believe that less than 2 months after the Adam Petty tragedy, that once again the NASCAR racing family is forced to deal with another loss of life. And like Adam Petty, just like you said, Kenny Irwin was one of NASCAR's brightest young rising stars on their horizon. He had a lot of promise, there's no doubt about that. In his days in USAC, he won 2 Rookie of the Year titles there. Then he came to NASCAR and won 2 more in the Craftsman Truck Series and, like you said, in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. It was obvious, evident, the amount of promise that career held. Now, like you say, it will have to go unfulfilled. My thoughts and my prayers are with Kenny Irwin's friends and his family. We lost an extremely nice young man here on Friday. Here's Steve Burns.
Thanks, Glenn. It's so hard to know what to say because nothing we can say will bring Kenny Irwin back. You know, just a moment ago, Eli Gold referred to Kenny Irwin as a racer. Folks, that's the ultimate term of respect in this sport. Not to be called Mr., but to be called a racer, and that's what Kenny Irwin was. He was also a stand-up guy. You know, when he got in that 28 car, he endured some criticism. He never ducked the media. He'd always answer a question, always polite about doing so. Kenny Irwin was a racer, and he was also a stand-up guy, Ralph.
Whether he was putting the right rear of his midget in the cushion at Terre Haute or drafting at Daytona, Kenny Irwin was just that, Steve. He was a real racer, and he loved nothing more in this life than to do that. Climb behind the wheel of a race car and give it everything he had. And he earned a great deal of admiration from his fellow competitors for that very reason. A lot of the drivers that you've talked to here this weekend, including names like Tony Stewart, will tell you he was the toughest competitor they ever faced. Some of the NASCAR Winston Cup drivers never got to see the full complement of what Kenny Irwin could do behind the wheel of a race car. Unfortunately, we won't have that chance. But for those of us who have seen Kenny behind the wheel doing what he did best, it truly was magical. Unfortunately, for now, the magic is gone.
When we come back, the reaction of other drivers to the passing of Kenny Irwin, and we'll spend time with NASCAR's Mike Helton. All of that coming up. Welcome back to the New Hampshire International Speedway. Some high clouds today, but 95,000 plus fans are expected as per usual for the thatlook.com 300. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Eli Gold. You know, drivers are hesitant to talk about a tragedy on the racetrack, but at the same time, we all lost a friend, let alone a co-competitor. Ralph Shaheen had a chance earlier this week to talk with the drivers, and Ralph, everybody, in addition to that note of friendship, had a note of sorrow, certainly, to their voices.
Absolutely, Eli. You know, anytime you have the opportunity to watch a true craftsman work his specialty, it's incredible. And Kenny Irwin was absolutely an artist at his craft. We talked to the drivers about that.
I raced with Kenny for 9 years, and you know, ever since I moved down to 3/4 midgets into full midgets, he was the guy I had to race hard each week, and if I wanted to win the race, he was the guy I had to beat each week. So, you know, it's just one of those weird things. I mean, ever since we've moved into Winston Cup, I mean, every time I get a practice sheet, the first thing I do is look to see where he is and look to see where Bobby Labonte is. So, it's just hard. I mean, he was a great racer. I mean, in the 21 years I've raced, there was nobody tougher than he was. I mean, it didn't matter whether it was a midget on dirt or a Silver Crown car or a sprint car on pavement. It didn't matter. He was a contender to win every week. And you know, I heard a quote yesterday. That people thought that they hadn't seen the best of Kenny Irwin in a Winston Cup car. I agree.
We all think that the most important thing in the world is this racing, but it's really not. And this is a good example of why it's not. You know, it's a great sport. It's a competitive sport. It's great to watch. It's great to participate in. It is dangerous at times, and this kind of shows you that there are things more important than just racing.
There's nothing you can say that makes anybody feel any better. And you know, and every time somebody brings it up to me, it's hard to think about.
You know, Eli, I had the opportunity to watch Kenny come up through the ranks of his racing career in open wheels and midgets and Silver Crown and ASA and trucks and Winston Cup, and he really was a master craftsman.
He was that, Ralph. You know, many people have asked, should you race in the aftermath of a tragedy? Should you not? It's an emotional issue. Mike Helton is NASCAR's Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer.
NASCAR is more like a community, and if a citizen of a community passes away, the community still has to go on. The lights have to work, and the water has to run, and life has to go on. And your heart's not in it 100% necessarily, but it has to go on. And that's the way we look at our schedules. When it could have been that we didn't press on yesterday, but I don't know that would have made it any better. I think a lot of people, for the most part, just soon stay busy. But our procedures are to press on, and in cases like this. So it's not because we don't have a heart or a soul. It's simply because that we have a lot of responsibility. Everybody does in the garage areas to a lot of different people. And the biggest thing is that that's what we do. We race, and that's what Kenny did. He races, and that's what Adam did. He races, and that's what we do. And it's a matter of I think in some people's mind, it's what's necessary is to press on.
Mike Helton addressing all of this weekend's activities for NASCAR, the sanctioning body. When we come back, more driver reaction and Steve Burns' visit with Darrell Waltrip. We are back at New Hampshire International Speedway here in Loudon. The NASCAR Winston Cup team's going racing here on TNN in just a short while. You know, over the years, Darrell Waltrip has kind of become a spokesperson for the drivers on the NASCAR Winston Cup scene. Whether there's a rule that needs clarification or some heartfelt tragedy that needs explaining, Darrell is the man we turn to.
I think probably the fan, the guy at home, watching this on TV, or that heard about what happened here with Kenny. I'm sure he's sitting there saying, how can those guys, how can they go back out there and act like nothing happened? How do they do that? And trust me, in this garage area Friday, people were walking around looking at each other like, how can we do this? How can we keep going? You know, Kenny was a great kid, and we all loved him. And you know, I felt really awkward getting in my car and going out on the track because a kid had just lost his life in that corner over there. I had to drive down that straightaway right into that same corner. Man, I'm checking my throttle, I'm checking my brakes, I'm checking my brain. What am I doing here? We have to learn from this. Let's don't sweep it under the rug and forget about it. Let's learn from it. Let's move forward. I'm not pointing a finger at anybody. Let's look at the racetrack. You know, that's two times right in the same spot. Let's look at the racetrack. Let's be objective about it. Let's don't just let it go and say, oh, it's one of those things. Let's make some, let's do something with it. Let's show that out of respect for Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin that we're going to make some changes. We're going to look at this a little differently, and we're going to try to prevent it from happening again. From an old guy that's been in a sport for 30 years, that would give me some comfort. We're taking this thing, and we're not just avoiding it. We're not just hoping it'll go away, but we're saying, okay, we had a problem there, and we fixed it. That would give me a lot more confidence in the track and NASCAR and everybody involved. It'd give me a lot more respect for everybody involved if it was handled just like an airplane crash. Take the car, a panel of experts puts it back together. Here's what happened. The throttle hung in the floor mat, or the hot throttle hung in the firewall, or the throttle hung under the air cleaner. But something happened, and the throttle hung. There's plenty of people that saw it. So don't tell me, you know, well, we don't know what happened.
Darrell Waltrip, we thank him for his time as he sat with Steve Burns earlier this morning here at the New Hampshire International Speedway. When we come back, Dick Berggren with a tour through a somewhat subdued garage area. Now, as we rejoin you from New Hampshire International Speedway, let's go trackside and join the activities. The public address announcer here in New Hampshire is Al Robinson.
Ladies and gentlemen, please once again direct your attention to the presentation stage. Please stand for today's invocation and national anthem. And we would ask gentlemen to please remove your hats. Our invocation today will be delivered by Bishop Michael Cody, Auxiliary Bishop of Portland, Maine.
Let us observe a moment of silence for Kenny Irwin. Let us pray. Father in heaven, out of your infinite love, you have called us into being and sustain us daily. For this gift of life, which you have so generously bestowed upon us, we praise your holy name. Father, today we are especially mindful of Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin. Bless their families. Lord, may their loved ones be strengthened by the knowledge that both Adam and Kenny live with you in peace and eternal happiness. Father, look kindly upon your people who have gathered here for this NASCAR Winston Cup race. May they enjoy their stay and later travel in safety. Father, be present in a special way to the drivers in today's race. Give them your protection. Sharpen their skills. Keep them alert. Help them to use their abilities with foresight. May fair play rule the day, and in the end, may the best driver among them emerge victorious. Bless their families, Lord. Keep them always close to you and to one another. Finally, we thank you for the beauty of this day, for the good weather which we enjoy, and which is one more sign of your care for us. We ask all of this in the name of your only begotten Son, Jesus Christ the Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Good afternoon, everybody. From New Hampshire International Speedway, I'm Eli Gold. For the second time in 2 months, we greet you from New Hampshire with heavy hearts. In May, we were shocked by the death of 19-year-old Adam Petty, and today we mourn the passing of 30-year-old Kenny Irwin. As no doubt you know by now, Kenny was fatally injured here on Friday while practicing for today's race. You know, as was the case 2 months ago with Adam, you search and you search for any understanding of why a vibrant 30-year-old has been taken from our midst. And as was the case with Adam 2 months ago, I at least can come up with no good answer to help ease the pain and fill the void that I know we are all experiencing together here today. As a NASCAR Winston Cup star, Kenny Irwin was just beginning to show his ability. The 1998 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year had only made 87 career starts. He was just now beginning to post some of those statistics that we all knew he was so capable of. As a USAC Sprint Car, Silver Crown, and Midget champion, and then as a graduate of the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, Kenny's previous racing accomplishments had truly become legendary. Seeing Kenny Irwin in victory lane was commonplace. Unfortunately, that's a sight now that will have to live on only in our memories. Needless to say, all of us here at TNN Sports, New Hampshire International Speedway, the entire NASCAR family extend our heartfelt condolences to the Irwin family and to each and every one of you whose lives were in any way touched by Kenny Irwin. Kenny dead at the age of 30. Dick Berggren is alongside. You know, this is a magnificent sport, but occasionally it's punctuated by a downright terrible weekend like we're having to endure here in New Hampshire.
Indeed, Eli. We all feel for Kenny's friends, his family, and his fans. They grieve today along with his crew. This is a family-owned and operated racetrack. The Bear family, Bob, Gary, Sandy, care deeply about their drivers, and they are terribly saddened, as are we. Today's race is tough on everyone who came to know Kenny Irwin, but with respect, the show will go on.
Buddy Baker, as per usual, on our telecasts as well, a Hall of Fame racer. And Buddy, regretfully over the years, you've experienced this, losing good friends on the racetrack.
Eli, far too many times. And, you know, when you start thinking about Kenny Irwin's accident, it is a tragedy, but it also makes everybody aware of the problems that they have with the cars, with the racetrack, and everybody's focused, and they're trying to find out ways to make sure this does not happen anymore. And hopefully they'll make the racetracks a little safer, race cars a little safer, so we don't have to have these kind of shows anymore. Everybody here is thinking about Kenny Irwin.
Now let's go trackside. Glenn Jarrett, our senior pit reporter, joining us on the telecast this afternoon.
Well, thanks a lot, Eli. And it is indeed a somber mood down here. But during that, I'm trying to focus on the good things that I remember about Kenny Irwin. And that started when he first broke into the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Right away, he won a couple of races. And I thought, man, there's a kid with a lot of talent, a lot of promise. But then later on that same year in 1997, Robert Yates helped to put him in a David Blair Motorsports Ford for the Winston Cup race at Richmond in the fall. He not only qualified second in his first ever race, he went on to finish eighth. A truly remarkable feat for a guy in his first ever Winston Cup race. It was evident to me Kenny Irwin was a Charger. His heart was in the right place, there's no doubt about that. And now his soul is in a better place. And all we have left are memories of a really fine young man. This morning in church services, his former car owner, Robert Yates, summed it up best in a very emotional eulogy. Here are Robert's words. If we prepare for life by living with faith in God, then we will be prepared for death when it comes.
Glenn, I had the privilege of interviewing Kenny Irwin in Homestead, Florida when he won his very first Truck Series race, and I'll never forget the look of joy and exuberance on his face as he climbed out of that number 98 truck. He got to the Winston Cup Series and got in the 28 car. People expected a lot of Kenny Irwin, and he never failed to answer a tough question, never dodged a single reporter. He was always a pleasure to be around. Now again, Kenny Irwin will be missed, and he was a young man with a lot of courage.
You know, to try to find the words to describe the feelings of the loss of emotions that everybody is suffering through here this weekend is virtually impossible. What's even tougher is to try to find the words to console each other, to find the comfort in what seems like a senseless situation. But in talking to the drivers here today, the toughest part for them now is going to be trying to find the courage that they need to summon up to drive for 300 laps here. Racing on a good day is a very tough sport. Today, Eli, racing is a brutal sport.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Now trackside, our Grand Marshal, great broadcaster Ken Squire.
In the memory of their fallen comrades, Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin. Gentlemen, start your engines and Godspeed.